What a second day. So I have to start by making a confession. When Jordi and I discussed the title of the conference, Can Purpose Deliver Better Corporate Governance? We were a little bit worried. We were worried that everybody would say yes, and that it would be a really boring conference. Now, I think on day one, we already had no shortage of debates, so there was nothing to worry about yesterday. And it continued today. So yesterday we had, in fact, Colin Meyer and Luigi Zinganis agree on a number of points, including that the Friedman-Coase view of maximizing enhanced or enlightened shareholder value needed to be updated and revised. And today, Bengt Holmström comes and says that he disagrees, that he thinks that, and he argued it very forcefully, that in fact, what we're observing is Coase at work. And that, in fact, it's unwarranted to be changing capitalism and to see, how things are working out. So I don't know about you. I drew a breath, and then we got Paul Polman. And I have to say, for a Dutchman, maybe this is because Paul has been living in the UK for so long. He then very politely disagreed with a Nobel Prize winner, and he said that actually what needs to evolve and what does not needs a reality check. And he started with good news. So that's always good to start with good news. He said, we live longer, so we like that. But then he reminded us that the rest is not so good, that we actually cannot go on the way we have been doing so far, because in the last 40 years, we've done more damage than in the whole history of mankind, which is remarkable. And we are borrowing from future generations, so we just can't go on this way. Now, actually, so footnote, I'm jumping ahead, Bengt didn't disagree on that point. He actually agreed on that point later on. So that was the first of the commonalities. We then had a discussion and we heard about, the role of information, and you can go back to the recording once of course we make it available to listen to the exchange. And then there was another point where there was agreement, which was very interesting, almost paradox. Bengt and Paul agreed that actually, if you look at the most valuable companies today, the founders never really cared about what investors think about what they're doing. In fact, Paul evoked the example of Mr. Lever, or Lord Lever, as he later became. He actually wanted to solve problems. He wanted to solve the problem of hygiene and nutrition. And by the way, this was also true for Nestle. He wanted to bring a better way of feeding people. And that was actually something that Luigi and Colin agreed on yesterday. People are not only motivated by money. You can, of course, think of a well-known company that produces electric cars. Now, we can debate, of course, whether the founder of that company only cares about the environment or maybe also about, crazy ideas and money. We don't know yet. But anyway, I thought that was a really interesting takeaway, that people care about ideas and they, these things, and that is their true purpose. Now, then the other link with yesterday was, of course, that yesterday both Colin and Luigi agreed that just pure purpose statements are verbiage. In fact, Colin called them twaddle. And when Jordi and I discussed the conference, one thing that we also wanted to achieve was to bring economists together with management people. And their reaction, of course, was very predictable from economists, because economists essentially, when you don't give them an argument that includes prices or quantities, they will be very skeptical. And here comes Bengt, a Nobel Prize winner in economics. And, the second thing he did was he disagreed with Colin and Luigi. And he said, actually, purpose statements are incredibly useful because they provide a mission statement that rallies people around the same purpose and gives a hands-on experience to leaders. Now, I have to say that, something you might not know is that Bengt actually has a lot of board experience and served on actual boards. So unlike, so he's actually an academic who's, has board experience. Now, of course, when you have this sort of thing, it's not enough to convince other economists that the theorists argue this point, even if he's been on boards and has a Nobel Prize. But what you can do is you can argue with them, if you're a management scholar, with a currency they understand, which is data. And that's exactly what Claudine Gartenberg did. And she provided really an outline of 2 fascinating papers where she did a deep dive into microdata on employees. And she showed that actually there is a link between purpose statements and how middle management, in this case, I was struck how middle management was actually middle management, makes a difference to deliver better outcomes. She also linked the whole thing to ownership, and we had talked about private equity and about hedge fund activists, and I'll leave you to review the evidence she presented. There is a link, and it is not so good for some of the owners. So I think what we then conclude at the end of the second day, we asked the question, can purpose deliver better corporate governance? We didn't really get an answer to that question, but we got an empirical answer from Claudine, which is that actually, can purpose deliver better corporate governance? We don't quite know, but we do know that ownership and governance determines purpose, and purpose matters for outcomes. So that's not quite the answer to the question we asked, but I think it was a very good conclusion, empirical conclusion to our second day. Now, Felix has asked me to remind everybody that those who had registered in the parallel sessions should use the separate link that the organizers have sent them by email to log in there. And if you haven't done that, for everybody else, do tune back in tomorrow. There's more to come, and I'm sure we'll have further surprises. Because as Becht once said, if you do research and you think you know where it will take you, you are not doing very interesting research. And I think the same is true for conferences. And I think this has been so far a very interesting conference. So thank you very much.